for a few seconds, and I'm hoping Costa's good. Costa, you're not going anywhere. You're probably in Bermuda shorts. If I know you, you got Bermuda shorts on with a nice jacket and shirt. Just saying.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
I know. It's all good. There's Tim. Tim, talk. Talk.
Can you guys hear me?
Of course we can hear you.
All right. I haven't lost my voice.
Oh, Costa's in his, he's got a fireplace happening there in London.
It's cold.
Well, I want to thank Costa and Gary and everybody else for being part of the call. It's good to come together under any circumstances.
One way or another, eh? So, Tim, why don't we proceed? I was waiting for you. I was hoping that you'd get on. I'm just going to go ahead and just quickly introduce who we have here, and we're just going to go free form. First of all, for everybody who's on today, welcome. That's fantastic. Daniel will be controlling some of the volume back there, but I want Tim, myself involved here for communicating. But we have Jason Stevens. Jason's going to introduce himself, but he's coming in from the East Coast. Actually, New Brunswick, if I believe he's at home in St. John. I didn't say St. John's, I said St. John. And Costa's out in, I believe, London. You're in the London area, if I'm not mistaken, but I'll let you guys run for that. We have most of our staff is watching this too. And Tim, is there anything else you want to add before we turn it over to those guys?
No, I mean, the only thing I wanted to add is that Daniel and I have been working on a presentation that is an expanded working with COVID-19 presentation that covers all the questions that a consumer or our client will have. And it's going to cover not just a description of what COVID-19 is and what we've been going through. However, the good questions that are things like, is this a good time to buy or sell, or should I wait? Is the real estate actually selling right now? The other question is, if I'm a buyer, how will showings work? And what if someone in the transaction gets sick or loses their job? What if there's a delay in closing caused by COVID-19? And as a seller, what's the process for putting a home for sale in this current market? And how will showings be handled? I'm not sure I want people walking through my house. So we're going to be covering these topics in the presentation that you'll be able to send to your clients and use. And on the back of the page, in a separate page, you'll have the working with COVID form. And that is very, very similar with working with a realtor. But the difference is that it talks about the indemnity that's required for people like real estate agents, brokerages, home inspectors, photographers, and the client acknowledging that they have had everything explained to them in detail. This is not a cover our ass it's document. It's actually deeper than that. It just takes a very, very proactive approach. Having a seller's guide or a buyer's guide won't cut it. And we believe that this is demonstrating leadership in the industry. I had a conversation with somebody just yesterday that's not part of our office that has traveled back and forth from the East, different countries in Asia. And wearing masks is not abnormal. It's part of society. As a matter of fact, if anybody feels uncomfortable or has any form of cold symptoms, they've been wearing masks for years. So there's a high probability that this will be used quite more frequently in our society until this is beat, and it will become much more acceptable to wear a mask. So we need to be ahead of this. We need to treat it as if this is a new normal, even though I'm praying to God that it's not. I can't wait to give people hugs and high fives and
eat at a restaurant.
Eating at a restaurant without being 6 feet apart or 8 feet apart. All these things, I do believe will be back to normal, but at the same time, we will be living with this around us. And by living with it around us, I mean, it's not going to be cured after the lift in Ontario is gone. It's still going to be around us. So we have to navigate through this, and we have to carry ourselves like it's going to be here for 6, 7, 8 months, a year, and not just gone just like that. So watch for that. It may not be out today. It may be out today, but it'll definitely be out by tomorrow. Right, Daniel?
Daniel, wake up.
Correct. Yeah, I'm actually about to send him the final draft.
Oh my God, that's super. So,
Okay.
but what we want to also hear from, I mean, and I want to thank Larry for organizing this with our legal counsel in Cohen & Cohen. They're a fantastic firm. They always have our backs. And I also want to acknowledge and thank Larry too for being able to bring together the hot seats.
Yeah.
Right, the ones that are at the federal level right now, who are going to provide, who are our advocacy group in lobbying the government, with Larry being on as a director, lobbying the government with a lot of the Canadian emergency relief benefit plans that our realtors need and our brokerages need at this time, to assist us in getting through it, not just from an emotional perspective, but a financial perspective as well. So with that, I'm going to mute myself, and I'll let you guys do the talking.
Absolutely. And again, thank you so much, Tim. And this is dovetailing beautifully in because as everybody knows, just so you know, we got Jason Stevens, we got Costa Papalopoulos. I say it always wrong anyways, but I know how to spell it. I do know how to spell it. And on top of that, we have Gary Wong, our legal side. So having said that, I'm going to get Jason and Costa, if you guys would like to jump in and whatever, maybe Jason Stevens, if you like, and I'll mute myself for now.
Great, thanks, Larry. I'm glad this is being recorded, and it's duly noted that I heard Tim Siriano say that he was going to mute himself. That's an interesting comment I thought I'd never hear. And I know how to say Costa's last name is Palopoulos, but I have no idea how to spell it. So let's just get those two things out of the way really early on in this whole chat. And look, we're going to toss back and forth. Costa's an amazing, I've been blessed to have great leadership on either side of me. Barb preceded me. I'm president for, I don't know, another 5 days or so, 4 or 5 days, and then Costa gets the reins. So we've been trying to work in unison because Tim, Larry, you guys have been president of your local board. There's a handoff period, but certainly the handoff in these times is we're in uncharted territory. I've said to people, the National Association understands the uncertain, unprecedented times. And in the face of adversity, honestly, we want to be there for members and do these sorts of town halls. And, it's not scripted. It's just a sit down chat. We'll do a question and answer, informal gathering of members. And, I choose to look at the positives of the place that we're in. Although it's uncertain and it's unprecedented and there's no script for the times that we're in. I think we're going to look back at this time. We're not going to celebrate it, but I think we'll look back at this time and think that some things changed and some things will help us do our business and some things, will evolve. And I, having said that, by the time I will have reached the end of my presidency in about a 2.5 week period, I will have talked to over 3,000 realtors on the ground, which I can't really say a lot of people in my position would do in such a short amount of time. And I know, Costa and I have had several conversations. He's just going to be, in the same position as I am because people want to understand the National Association. So if you'll allow us, what we'll do is we'll just go through the three key priorities that our National Association had heading into this pandemic and how they relate to the pandemic. It's probably why the National Association was able to deal with this face of these uncertain times well, because we had clear priorities and they do relate back, as Tim said, to things that help our realtors on the ground, thrive and survive. So, my famous thing is when we're in adversity, this has really challenged my inner leader. I've been blessed at a young age to have a lot of leadership positions and Larry and Tim and Costa, they've all been in that position. But when you're faced with the scenario that we're in right now, it challenges your inner leader side. And the one prepared statement I have is a quote that I found early on from Albert Einstein, and it reads, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking used when they were created." So, you know, we're letting people know that, you know, I think this whole notion of, you know, as Tim suggested in his chat, you know, where consumer behavior will be, you know, will it be satisfactory just to say, you know, we've always done it that way and we'll continue doing it again, you know, is something that, you know, will be challenged. So on step number one, I'm gonna just talk about reputation, and Tim, those topics are phenomenal. That's great. You know, if I was a realtor in Toronto, I think those topics are, you know, I'm a realtor in St. John, New Brunswick. Those topics are relevant to me. And so that's great leadership from you to have those discussions. We're asking people to be very professional out there, to respect consumers, you know, respect health authorities. You know, we recently saw, you know, people going outside that space. There was a realtor that wrote a letter, you know, suggesting that, I think it was in London, suggesting now might be a good time to sell your house so you don't lose it to the bank. And, you know, we're just asking people to, you know, we understand there will be some financial penalty and some financial pain. I understand that. I'm a full service, full-time realtor in St. John, and my income will be reduced out of this. But in that face of adversity, just like I'm standing here with your group, we're asking people to be professional, because as we get later on in the discussion, when we talk about advocacy, it's important that governments, both provincially and nationally, see our group as a profession that's advocating for consumers and our members. And I know that, you know, we're resilient, we're a very professional bunch, and we will ride through this. Realtors are kind of you know, we are a different breed. We get hired and fired every day. We deal with adversity every day. So this is a different challenge. It's one of a larger scale. It's one that will have a bigger impact. But the resiliency and the professionalism that I see from our national membership whenever I travel this beautiful country, I know exists. And so thanks very much for having us. Just before I toss it to Costa about the ad, you know, we talk about, you know, in all levels of organized real estate, always talk about disruption. And at the end of the day, what app was going to come along and how would the realtor be threatened, and, you know, and what technology would threaten, you know, the course of a real estate transaction. And, you know, it's interesting, not one room in the last 10 to 15 years that I've been in with strategic thinkers thought that a pandemic would cause disruption, but this pandemic is causing the disruption that we all were trying to avoid. So my theme is the National Association is here with you now. And when we get out of this, we will get out of this, and we will have an opportunity to be with you. And Costa's going to talk a little bit about the ad strategy. We did, you know, unleash our ad on a, you know, a basis, and he'll talk about that strategy. And then, you know, we'll kind of go from there. Costa, can I toss to you on Costa was a member of the ad committee that came up with this year's ad and did a phenomenal job.
Thank you, Jason. And thank you, Tim and Larry, for allowing both Jason and I the opportunity to engage with your group. And kudos to you guys for the leadership that you've taken. I've worked with both of you at the leadership level. I know the caring and the professionalism that you exemplify, not only for your brokerage, but for all realtors across the country. And thank you for that. I want to touch on, before we get into the ads, you know, what Jason was touching on, and that's, you know, we're all in the same situation. You know, realtors are worried about, oh my God, when is this going to be over? Am I going to be able to survive? Am I going to be able to sustain myself until the pause is lifted? And I want to be clear that we know that we believe this is a pause. This is not business lost. This is business paused. We don't know how long the pause will be, and what level of, when the pause is released, we'll get back to some sense of normalcy, but we're not sure about that. But it is a pause. The level of interest that was there March 12th, pre-pandemic time, where the buyers, the demand for housing was really high level and the supply was low. The pause that caused the pandemic, that caused this pause, when the pause is lifted, that will resume. That will resume. So So we just need to navigate through this. And I have to say that, you know, realtors are concerned about that. Brokerage owners are concerned about broker viability across this country. Am I going to be able to sustain this? Are we able to, you know, to get some sales to keep generating and to keep, you know, keep things going? So those are real concerns. And it doesn't matter what brand you're at or what part of the country you're at. These are real concerns. And so we have lots of challenges. You know what? It may take time for the economy to rebuild to the level of prosperity that we all took for granted pre-March 12th. But we will get there. And I have to tell you that when Jason touched on reputation, well, we've faced collectively as realtors, people that have been in this business for a long time. I know Larry and Tim, I mean, I've been in it, this is my 33rd year since 1987 when I got licensed. We have seen and we have faced and we have lived through many challenges and crises, many of them. I mean, look, 10 years ago, the big collapse of the banks in 2008, who would have seen that coming? The good news is in today's crisis, if there's a silver lining here, is that the pandemic is a health crisis. It's not economically. Now there's an economic impact that's happening because of it, because of shutting down the economy. But you know, there's liquidity in the banks. Without being partisan, love it or love or hate the federal government now, they've done a great job. They've done a tremendous job putting liquidity into the banks to keep the flow of transactions and the accessibility and the availability of funds to keep going. So kudos to them for that. And we're going to touch on advocacy because, you know, to put out this kind of level of stimulus package for the economy during this pandemic crisis that we're in, kudos to them. I mean, it's almost the approach was ready, fire, aim. They you know, they didn't think it through, and because it happened so quickly, but they're tweaking it. And that's where we play a role as your national association to step up on your behalf and say, hey, wait a second, you haven't captured all citizens across Canada. You know, this industry, our profession has fallen through the cracks, and we'll touch on how it first rolled out and how it's been tweaked and how we've now captured our members across the country. And so kudos to them. I mean, this is something that would normally, in normal times, would have taken a year to implement. They've implemented it in a week, and they're listening and they're adapting and they're making changes, not just on a weekly basis, but almost on a daily basis to make sure that they cover as many citizens and as many of the workforce throughout the country. So kudos to them. Back to the challenges that we've all faced, the ones that have been in the business a long time. You know, what has endured in all of these things and what's going to endure when we come out of this pandemic health crisis is going to be that consumers are in need of a trusted advisor. And that's our role as realtors. They're in need of expertise, and that's our role. And so when Jason touches on reputation of a realtor, the value of a strong ethic in our realtor brand is essential. They're going to be looking to us as trusted advisors to navigate through this craziness. And I know with your brand, Tim, you've done a phenomenal job as leaders, Larry, in your brokerage and in Toronto. You exemplify that. You try to always raise the bar. Well, now more than ever, that's going to be so important for when this comes back. Consumers are going to be looking to us as realtors to help them navigate through this. So, you know, we have to work together, and it's a matter of working collaboratively at all levels, all brands, for the betterment of this profession. The realtors, you on the street, you're looked at as leaders from your clients and customers. They're looking for some guidance, some sense of making sense of this craziness. And so they're reaching out to you. Broker owners from every brand, all brands across this country. The only way we're going to get through this together, is to work collaboratively together. And then let's be honest, our MLS, the genesis of MLS across this country was built on cooperating and sharing. When you cooperate and share, you know, that's when everybody comes out ahead. And competition is good, but when you compete, somebody wins, somebody loses. Now more than ever is the time that we have to pool together our resources. All stakeholders have to step up and raise the bar and navigate through this for when we come out of it. So I know that's a lot of, see, I did all this talking. I didn't even address the advertising, Jason. I'll learn about that. So, but you want to throw me on to the advertising?
I think it's a Greek thing.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, with the name thing, I think there were only 3 of us that knew if it got right or wrong. Tim, you're one of them.
I think, Jason, I think you talk about me not stopping. I think you got the next guy there who's not stopping, right?
So you know what? I'll touch on the ad unless there's questions. Look, as Jason said, this is a very free-flowing conversation with your group. We don't have really any scripts here. I mean, we have a few talking points, but we want to open it up at any point. If you want to raise your hand and ask a question of Jason or myself or Larry or Tim, I know you have a lot of the answers as well.
Yeah, Costa, if I may just jump in for one sec. Could you tell people where you're calling from, like where you are, like in your marketplace, if you don't mind? And also, Jason, just briefly, you can just touch on that. Maybe that would give people an idea of what's going on in your own territories.
Jason?
Sure. I'm calling from St. John, New Brunswick. We were off to our best start to a year ever. Certainly not the levels of activity that you guys would see. We were in supply shortage, but certainly not in the supply shortage, that you guys in Toronto are experiencing. But, I think Costa nailed it on the head. It's not hard to see the passion. I come from Lebanese heritage, so we're all in that Mediterranean Sea together, we have that Mediterranean passion, I like to call it. I do think people should be rest assured that people are in pause, and that the economic footing is so strong. And the one thing that I always like to talk about is, here's the thing, and we're going to get into these topics, so if you have government questions, we will get there. But in terms of the advocacy side, our conversation with government is easy because they understand in your neck of the woods, and for example, in Toronto, about $60,000 of ancillary spending comes out of a real estate transaction. So each real estate transaction in my neck of the woods, the number is a little bit lower because our average sale prices are a lot lower, but it's about 40,000. Because, there's real estate commissions, and then there's lawyers' fees, and there's furniture sales and appliance, that whole piece, and then those people go spend money. So the government realizes that, although we are into recessionary times economically, one of the quickest ways out, is through our markets. And, the pipeline is such that a real estate pipeline is, we were last in and we'll be first out. I do believe that. It's, the thing that I have, the crystal ball I'd love to have in my dining room right now is when that will be. But I think that when we're going to be able to get back to normal, we will be able to transition out. My heart breaks for people that are in business opportunities where that income is lost and very difficult to gain back. I think we're going to be there. So, I guess before I toss it to Costa, you might have seen some of our ads out there. We've downshifted. They're not offensive. They talk about the realtor brand and just, they speak to what Costa was saying about the knowledge and advice. And I believe this. I believe that realtors are going to be stronger out of this because I think it's going to be it's going to be more important to a consumer, as Tim touched on earlier. Is now the right time? Like all these questions, you can't Google those. You need somebody that's a professional advisor on the other end to kind of steer you through those times. So, I really believe in that, and I believe that that's what's going to take us out. So we've downshifted our ad to a very base level. It's not offensive. It didn't have a call to action. It didn't have, you got 30 days to get this. So our ad agency recommended that we play it out because the cost of stopping it altogether was about $1 million, which represented a huge amount. So we've laid a base, and we're going to back shift into the fall campaign. A lot of money that goes into that ad, and I've also told realtors that it's kind of a soft way of posting it to your social media. I know Larry would have received it. Feel free to share it. It's not offensive. It allows you to be out there with your consumers in a friendly, soft way. There's children in the ad, smiling and laughter, things that touch on people's hearts. So feel free to use that resource to silently let people know that you're in the background waiting for this to shift. Now I'll toss it to Costa, and he can give some thoughts on his market.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. And Larry, yes, I'm in London, Ontario. We have a market that we have about 2,000 realtors. We have population, I'm going to say close to $500,000 with the surrounding areas, $500,000 people. Average price is about $480,000, almost $500,000. Well, we saw pre-pandemic pandemic, pre-March 12th, our market was just, multiple offers. I mean, we're what, 2 hours down the highway from Toronto, from the GTA. We have a lot of people that were buying from Toronto. They saw the value so that has halted. There's been a pause. There are transactions that are happening. If I had to put a number, I haven't seen, it did came out yesterday, but we've been on so many calls. I think from what I perused on our social media platforms, that we're probably down 80% from the number of sales. So if we were doing 5,000, we'd probably be doing like very, very few now. I don't know, maybe even 10% of that. Those are the essential buyers and sellers. So there's been a pause. There's no question as people are navigating through this, and as consumers are heeding the advice from health agencies at all level and from governments, local and provincial. So you know what, that we're in that kind of a pause area. There are transactions that are happening, but the demand that was there, I have to tell you, I mean, these people are not going to go away when the pause gets lifted. That demand is still necessary. Tim?
I just want to add a very important information that the showings since our last meeting have actually steadily increased. I want to share that our showings have steadily increased over the past few days. Just wanted to share that so everybody understands.
And Tim, kudos to you on that, because it's true, because we've been getting calls about people going, they want to show properties, and is there any different kind of protocol? This is where this protocol comes in. And we're very fortunate too, because I see Gary there in the bottom there just joined too, which is fantastic. Gary Wong, Costa, and Jason that can see this. Gary is our legal counsel for us, to be honest. And maybe Tim, I can get you to talk a little bit about Gary, and then we'll come back to maybe some questions maybe for Jason and Costa, if that's okay.
Well, I want to, if it's all right, once Gary's done, I want to just be able to run through the other two priorities.
Absolutely, 100%.
Awesome. Thanks.
Gary, if you want to just introduce yourself, Gary, while you're on the line there. I got you there in front of me, if you don't mind.
Great. Can everyone hear me?
Say it again.
Can you hear me? Oh,
I can.
1 second. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Sorry. My name's Gary Wong. I'm one of the partners at Cohen LLP. We're real estate lawyers and the preferred partners for RE/MAX Ultimate. In terms of COVID and the topics today, I think, Jason and Costa and Tim have really impressed upon what's really important. A, we all have to be professional. And B, we have to really adapt to the situation and be able to do that. We're in unprecedented and uncharted territory right now. As soon as the essential services order came through, law firms like real estate brokerages had to act and adapt very quickly in a very short period of time. So what were the challenges to law firms, to us specifically, to ensure that your deals closed properly and will close in the future and currently? There are a number of things that, I'm just going to quickly go over. How do we actually meet our clients? Okay, because prior to COVID, we actually had to meet them in person, face to face. Number two, how do we deal with other law firms in terms of transfer of funds and documents? Everything used to be in paper copies and certified checks and bank drafts. We had to proceed that way previously to close the transactions and ensure that the deals close. In adapting to the COVID, there are a number of, and Tim and I have had discussions about these new clauses that various brokerages are putting out to deal with closures, potential closures of the land registry office and banks. Some brokerages are putting out releases and indemnities to protect visitors or in regard to visits to the properties. So just really, those are some of the issues and challenges that we're dealing with.
Gary, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
I know it's going to be awesome. I'd like to segue this in with Tim, because Tim's got
Great.
some things that he's going to do. And what I would really like to do, and I think this is awesome, so everybody understands what's going on today. It's, again, this is very informal, as you can see. And we want to utilize these fantastic people that are on today, plus all the people that are watching. If I can get Jason, if you'd like to maybe conclude with some of the topics and maybe take some Q&As, that would be great. And Tim, if you're okay with that, we can get back and have Tim and Gary also get involved, and Costa and everybody involved here after that. But if that's okay with you, Jason, do you mind maybe finishing off some points, key points?
Thanks, Larry. So I guess the scenario is, as Gary mentioned, and I think Tim mentioned, most all provinces in Canada have been labeled essential. Now, I think we can all agree we're not essential in the same capacity as doctors and frontline, workers, doctors, nurses, firefighters, police, officers. But we are essential because, the way that I put it is we're the pipeline to people having the basic need of shelter, whether that's an apartment or a house, any form of shelter. And so that's somebody's very basic need. And so, people like Gary are working very hard and realtors are working very hard. We realize that there are people that are in that essential need. In your end of the country versus mine, your clients buy homes without selling homes. And so maybe somebody bought a house pre-COVID-19 and now they're stuck into this. So there are rational reasons to why a transaction has to occur. So what we've done at CREA is we try to, we also agreed that because of that, it wasn't business as usual, that we had to be respectful of people's homes and how they felt comfortable. So we couldn't mandate anything about open houses across the country. It wasn't our lane to get into. It's up for local boards, provincial associations. What we did, though, is we did make a leadership decision to remove the advertising function from Realtor.ca to advertise an open house. And in very short order, I will tell you, the staff at CREA worked really hard and turned that around in, I think, about a week and a half to build up a virtual platform. That's now, you're able to do a virtual open house via Facebook Live, Instagram Live, YouTube, Zoom. There's now models out there to how you can have a showing with a buyer's agent. The seller takes you through the house and then you go offline and have a confidential conversation. And that's what I was talking about earlier in terms of that's not going to go away when we get out of this. That's only going to be built on more and more and more. So there will be some things that have impacted us, but will remain and make our jobs easier. And I know in my neck of the woods, I have a lot of people from Ontario and British Columbia moving in because of the affordability factor. And now the ability to be able to sell virtually, has really enhanced my offering to my clients. That's on the tech side, and I'm going to go into the advocacy side because it's the one side that everybody wants to talk about, and then we'll throw it open for some Q&As. But, as Costa said, some of these programs came out with the federal government and they weren't entirely lined up for realtors. And we worked very hard. Our advocacy department's been working 24/7 days a week. And when the Prime Minister's office calls you at 11 o'clock at night, which has happened, that's not just the fake scenario. You cannot say, well, it's after 5 o'clock, I'll get back to them tomorrow. You got to take that phone call. And, we've been taking those phone calls and the CREA program is out there for realtors. It's $2,000 a month or $500 a week. And, when the language came out, it now strengthened up to where we are. When it first came out, there was a lot of unanswered questions. I thankfully wasn't engaged in a lot of these town halls because I would have had a whole bunch of questions and not a whole lot of answers. But now it's very clear. In the language when it first came out is when a realtor stops working, when somebody stops working. So I always added in realtor, but do we ever stop working? I mean, I'm working in my living room. I'm getting price amendments. I'm doing what my clients want me to do each and every day. But now they've come out and said, if you've got 14 consecutive days without pay, then you would be able to qualify. And we're telling people, if you feel that financial hardship, it is meant for people that have been cut off. So from making an income to nothing, it's not really an income supplement program, but it's one that, people have bills to pay. They have to go about their daily business. And, It's a fairly easy qualification, no income within the 14-day period. They've set out the tables and the charts. Larry, you would have got our an email from our VP of GR, and the tables are all set out, so it's very clearly understood. It's a 14-day period within a section of a table. You know, and if you haven't received pay, then you're eligible to apply. If you apply and you get rejected, we want to know this, because the first program that came out, I'll get to your question in 2 seconds, Tim. The first program that came out didn't include people that didn't pay NDEI. It was only meant for self-employed people that paid NDEI. So, you know, we're happy that we were able to get that change. But Tim, I'll take your question before I go, before maybe Costa talks about the wage subsidy program.
Yeah, thank you. And the question that I have, if you don't mind taking it back and finding out, is a very important one.
I've lost video of them.
That's okay. When it comes to deemed paid, under CRA rules, it's not when you receive the check. It's when the deal actually closes. So independent contractors, whether you're an asphalt driveway installer or a contractor, it's deemed when, you know, in our business, when I've witnessed actual audits, you know, that happen to our realtors, most auditors do not look at when you receive the payment of a check, but they look at the closing date of actually when it's considered to be income. Could you take that back and have that clarified possibly to make sure that there's no misunderstanding?
So the one thing that we've been told, Tim, which might fly in the face of that information, it's basically when the brokerage cuts you the check. The money could be held in trust from, you can't fudge that number, but, you know, so Gary closes a transaction, maybe it takes him 4 or 5 days to get you the money to be able to pay your realtor. That's time that the realtor doesn't have to have that money. So the language that they came out with, our last assessment is if you had no income within that period, not the potential. And, you know, we advocated for deals written. They came back though and they said, you know, we agree with you that the bulk of the work is, you know, between when it's firm and when it's in writing, and there's a period that it goes to a lawyer. But at the end of the day, there could be transactions that don't close, and we don't get paid if it doesn't get closed. So, you know, the final kind of nail in the coffin is when the deal closes. So what we've been told is, you know, when that brokerage is in a position to pay you, because we've had other questions of, well, can my broker defer payment and hold those checks back? Well, no. You know, I think that would be the process that CRA would bring in and say to Tim, well, when did you get the, you know, the money from Gary, and match those two things together. But from what we understand, it's pretty clear and concise of no income in a 14-day consecutive period, you know, on a very professional basis. The wage subsidy program, you know, that's the big one for brokers, and you know, the language was tweaked. The last page of Parliament just changed. It went from a cash basis to an accrual basis. Now that is the one where we think that now that they've changed the language to both cash and accrual, Tim, you as a brokerage can say, yes, I saw a decline of firm deals between this period, you know, this year and this period last year. Before that, on a cash basis, you know, no brokerage could see that. Really, the only brokerages that may have seen that would be a brokerage out of Alberta, because they had some underlying economic, as Alan Tennant, the CEO of the Calgary board, said, they got hit in the knees and taken out at the ankles. You know, they had issues kind of heading into this, and you know, it's a scenario where most brokerages, whether small or large, I'm in a medium-sized brokerage. You know, there's small brokerages in my marketplace of St. John where there's 200 realtors. Even small brokerages couldn't prove that on a cash basis, but on an accrual basis, I think they've opened it up. And I know Costa, there's other programs out there that, you know, that the government came out with that he'll want to talk about as well, or add into whatever I've said.
I think you've covered it off, Jason. The third program for businesses is the Canadian Emergency Business Account, where you can apply for a bank loan of $40,000, and any one of the lenders will do that. It's through the federal government, but it's at your local, it's at your personal lender, any of the banks. or credit unions. And, you know, if you pay it back by a certain amount of time, December of, I don't know if it's 21 or 20, whatever that date is, and it's online, you'll see it with your bank, they will forgive 10,000 or waive 10,000 of that repayment. So they'll give you 40 if you pay it back by a certain date. You pay back 30, and that's just to keep again fluidity for businesses and small businesses to make sure that that they can keep going. Question was, and it depends if there are some large teams that have employees and staff, and you know within the brokerage, a big team, that a team of whatever number it is, you know, if that would fall under that category, and that's something that should be looked into.
And then, you know, as early as just like an hour ago, the government's now come out and reduced that threshold from 50,000 to 20,000. So people, it will open up now the application process for that one. So thanks, Costa. I mean, I think we've touched on, you know, advocacy, professional, you know, the reputation, the tech piece. There was more tech stuff, but maybe Larry
Yeah.
and Tim, you guys want to have your realtors do a Q&A with us on.
Yeah, that would be, Jason, seriously, thank you very much. And Tim, I'm in favor of doing that. I think if anybody on the site right now has any questions for Jason Costa and Gary, we will be coming to Gary and Tim also real soon. We might have everybody involved, but right now, if you have any questions directly for Jason or Costa, now's the time. And I'll let Daniel handle that, who's coming in and doing that. Okay. Daniel, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Andre.
So my question, I guess it could be to Jason, since he was referencing the subsidy there for realtors. Just to clarify, if I know there was a calendar in the CRA that I forgot how many months there were in that calendar time frame. I think there was 7. But let's assume that from April 1st to May 1st is one of those periods. And I got paid for one of my closings on April 1st. So I'm still within this calendar period, April 1st. Now, my next closing is on April 15th or 16th. So that's, I go without 14 consecutive days there without getting paid. Can I apply for this subsidy?
Jason, can I give an example and then you can jump on?
Yeah, go ahead.
So thank you for the question, Andre. This is so the first period was March 15th to April 11th, I believe. And so if you were to run let's just go back in time, March 15th, if you received 0 income from March 15th to March 29th, 14 consecutive days, and got paid out on March 30th, a closing, got paid on March 30th, you could apply for that subsidy of $2,000. That's for the 4-week period. Then the next 4-week period is April 12th to whenever the expiry of that is. I don't know the date. I don't have the calendar in front of me. And then you have to say, okay, well, on March 30th, I got paid. You have to count 14 consecutive days or start the period. So and to Jason's point, it's from when you got paid. You're also able to, if you know for certain, because you have written 0 transactions and you know you have no closings for the next period, you don't have to wait for the end of the period. You can apply right away when the period opens because you already know you have nothing coming in. So you don't have to wait for the end of the period to apply for that next period, if that makes sense. Jason, I don't know if you want to touch on that.
Yeah, like Andre, unfortunately, that example you provided us, you probably would get declined because
both periods.
Yeah, like that's right. It would jam you. But Costa's right. The first period is March 15th, and there's when the government released it, they only released 7 periods. There's actually an 8th period, and this has a large swath. So the other thing, you know, the emergency wage benefit program, I can't remember the acronym. That only goes till June 6th. That's a very short window. The one, the CREB one has a longer time period. I was trying to search for my notes. It's somewhere, you know, in October, the first part of October. with an application deadline of December 3rd. So it is retroactive. If you've sat down, you can go back. But once December 4th comes, the programs could be off the table. But yeah, it's for 14 consecutive days within the timetable that CRA has issued out. So unfortunately, Andre, the example you gave would overlap time periods. That would probably exclude you, but the example that Costa just mentioned would be completely in play.
Okay, thank you.
And just because Gary will appreciate this, this is just from information that we're being told and emails that we get disseminated. We always telling people to check with their accountants because sometimes there are scenarios where, you know, the other challenge I will tell you, we have 134,000 members that I've now counted get paid about 10 to 11 different ways. You know, there's, you know, you guys in Ontario, I don't think can professionally incorporate yet. It was just on the cusp. We can, and most other parts of the country can professionally incorporate. So you have, you know, do you get paid a salary out of that corporation, a dividend? You know, is it a realtor? Is it a team leader? Is it a broker owner? You know, I run a small little real estate team in St. John. The realtors that work with me get paid differently because then the brokerage pays me out and then I pay them. So there's just the challenge we've had is we don't really have that one prototypical payment process that we could take to government and say, this is how our membership gets paid. And they're trying to work within the confines. But we're asking people, you might fall through the cracks, and let us know, let Larry know. He can forward it on to our GR staff. The more personal we can make it with government about, you know, Andre in Toronto is working to help his family, and, you know, and the more personal we can make it with government, the better, you know, versus us just saying, you know, we're a large corporation trying to lobby the government.
Yeah, I'm glad Jason said that. Again, in full disclosure, we are not, you know, accountants. We're not purporting to be CRA experts on this. This is the program that we fought for. Initially, when it rolled out, it didn't really capture any realtors the way we were working. Now it is capturing. The latitude is opened up, so we're fortunate that now we're now able to tap into that. And as Jason said, talk to your accountant if you're not sure. We encourage people to apply. CRA will come back for documentation when they need to. If for some reason you apply and you get a flat out no, and you think that that's wrong, as Jason said, send it up to Larry or to CREA, because we want to capture those no's and find out why. And if it's you that got a no, there could be 40,000 other realtors across the country that got the same no, and we want to make sure that we fix that if it's something that we can advocate for.
I'm going to throw a question out to the group that I always get, and you know, I always like to deal with it head on. Is, you know, will CREA reduce my dues through this time period? And you know, I guess I'm prepared to have that conversation. I'd like to explain to you the due structure. You pay us $310 a year. It works out to be about $25 a month. Financially, we couldn't give more than 2 months, so we could give 1 month. So that would mean we would, you know, distribute $25 per member across the country. I know in Toronto, it's similar to my home board. You guys have already paid those dues in January, I believe. So it's already been invoiced and mostly has been paid. That's my case. So there's a bit of an accounting disaster, but, you know, that equates to about $3.5 million. And, you know, so when I make the statement in my opening remarks about the National Association being here for you now and when we get out of this, the leadership position was realtors want deals. They don't want $25. Yes, I understand that, you know, every dollar counts in these sort of economic conditions. But the board has really, you know, doubled down on the investment into our membership. When we know when the period is, we have a ready, set, go format. We're in the ready stage. We've still got another section, and then we're going to go. And whether it be our ad, whether it be realtor.ca, whether it be investments, we're not going to sit on that $3.5 million under Costa's leadership and that of the new board. We're going to strategically invest that money to get realtors leads. It's kind of funny this all happened, not funny, ha, although you could take it that way. We kind of did a lead gen project with realtor.ca last year that produced over 1,800% more leads to realtors. Now, we know what worked last year. We know what we can distribute. We know where our money went. So we can do that sort of investment into realtors. And we think that's going to help realtors when we get out of this to invest back into them with that sort of money versus cutting everybody a check for $25. So I do, you know, you might have had this conversation. I got this conversation. I'm very front and center in social media. I had this question very early on, and you know, we were meeting as a board and trying to be leaders in terms of saying we're going to invest in our membership when we're on this. So that's where we're at with it. We're not going to sit on that month worth of dues.
Are there any other questions in the queue, Daniel? I'm just asking that you can see.
No, that I see.
Okay. Oh, having said that, first and foremost, I want to say Jason and Costa, absolutely wonderful information that was given here. If you'd like to stick around, I'd love to have you guys stick around. Gary and Tim, I'm sure, again, very informal. We're going to be going through things with Gary Wong. And it'd be worth hearing that also on Tim's proactive about the protocol. So Tim, is there anything, again, unrehearsed here, buddy, is there anything you want to just jump in and say?
I just want to thank Jason and Costa for being here and being very proactive and responding to our emails so quickly.
Yeah.
You know, it's greatly appreciated, and I believe everybody in our office should know that we've been advocating to them, and they've been very responsive. And you know, there's a deep sense of caring. And we were one of the pilot project participants in the Realtor.ca platform, and we did see the benefits of what CREA has done. Right. So again, thank you for all you're doing. Don't stop. Keep on doing what you're doing. And Jason, I'm gonna share something to you personally. You're gonna wake up in about 6 days from now and wonder what the hell you're gonna do with all this time. And but I promise you one thing, that once you know, once that emotion passes, that you will fill it up so quickly. It'll be back to like normal. But anyways, thanks for all you did during the past year, Jason. Sorry that you've had to exit your post under these circumstances. I'm sure you still want to be there. Or if you really want to give Costa a hard time, just say, thank goodness I'm gone and it's all your baby right now.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Tim. That means a lot, man. We've known each other for a pile of years. Actually, I've got relatives that live in your neck of the woods where you guys have an office, and so I get up there. So the next time I'm in Toronto and I'm blessed to be I'll just I'll walk in and say hi, and you're right. I'll have some time to smell the flowers. It's a weird dynamic though, because I was saying to my neighbor, you know, you'd normally get out of something like this and go on a bit of a 4-day hiatus with your family somewhere. And I mean, I guess we're gonna maybe camp in the basement, and pretend like we go on vacation. You know, but I appreciate the relationships. I appreciate the opportunity. Larry's a great contributor around our board table, and he's up to speed with all this stuff. But it's always fun to be able to get out there and talk with the members. And I can't wait to get behind Costa. We formalized a process that just naturally has occurred over the years, and we've got a great team mentality at CREA right now, and I think we're achieving some pretty big things and some pretty more big things to you know, to happen. And you know, hey, Costa, why don't you tell them your theme? Because I think that was super, super interesting, your theme that was decided way before we got in this, you know, and it's going to give you a sense of the great leadership hands that we're in when we come out of this.
You know, we were talking about putting themes for the AGM, which is happening next week, Monday, Tuesday. And so what do you think? So, well, the theme should be, we have to embrace change, and we have to work together. I mean, that is not, it couldn't be more true today than it was when we talked about it 2 months ago. With the change that's happening and what we're faced with in front of us, it's got to be that we're going to have to embrace it. We're going to have to work together. Local associations, TREB, brands, brokerages, realtors on the street, the National Association, provincial, we all have to work together, and we're going to come out of this stronger, embracing the change of technology and the tools that we've all been sort of utilizing now. I mean, I have agents that have never been on a video call in their life, and they went from 0 to 100 in 2 days. They all have now in their vocabulary Zoom. So that's, it's pretty amazing. So, you know what, we'll work through this together. We look forward to it. Both you, Larry, and your team here at RE/MAX Ultimate, thank you for affording us the opportunity to engage you and As Jason said, CREA is here for you now. We'll be there for you after this pandemic crisis is over and for many, many years to come to help us get through this. Thank you, guys.
Well,
Gentlemen, thank you so much. And Tim, I guess you and Gary will take over right now, if that's okay.
Gary, I'd like to have, thank you guys. I'd like to have Gary take over at this point and talk about the status of closings, what he's experiencing, and maybe Gary, I'll let you, I'm sure there'd be questions from our entire team, especially because you and I have had some real deep-headed conversations about protecting our agents and their clients, both from us representing our sellers or representing our buyers, and the clauses, how they benefit each of them differently based on where you put the full stop of the period. That is something that I don't mind you sharing with them, and I want you to share with them, and I want you to really provide some guidance as our legal counsel.
Absolutely. So thank you, Tim.
Sorry, Gary, how is Max?
Max is good. He's back in the office now. He just was having a few chest pains, so I had him quarantined for about 2 weeks.
Okay,
just
good.
ensure that A, he gets healthy, B, ensure the safety of our staff at the office who are actually working physically from the office. So I'm just going to spend 2 minutes to give everyone an overview, and then what I'll deal with those clauses, and then we can have a Q&A on that. I really want to impress upon everyone that deals are still closing. We are getting the job done. So in terms of closings, we had 104 deals close in March. April, we've got 109 in the books. They will all close, except for a couple that may get extended. So we're very confident about that. We're able to adapt. Some of the challenges that we're dealing with, and I brushed upon it very lightly, is how are we meeting our clients? We're doing everything. We're equipped to meet all of our clients via video conferencing. So we will produce the documents. We email to the documents to the clients. They print it out. We jump on a Zoom call like we are now, and they'll execute all the documents, and everything's couriered back to us on our dime. So that's worked out quite nicely. The one thing I do, in terms of that, there's always this issue about the keys now. And I think that's really important. I had a discussion with Larry about that, keys. So 95% of lawyers and agents were all in agreement that the keys, please, should be left on the property within a lockbox, because that minimizes contact. So if we can if you as realtors can try to work that out with the listing or the buying agents that the keys were left in the lockbox, that would solve a lot of issues in terms of safety and whatnot. Now, in terms of actually closing your transactions, we are all equipped. Most lawyers now are equipped to wire funds, so that won't be an issue. Doesn't appear to be an issue. There's just a slight delay in the completion of the wires. In terms of documents, most of them are being scanned or faxed, so we should be fine, and we are fine with that. So in terms of getting the deals, we're quite confident in completing the deals. We're well equipped. We're in terms of electronic communication, some law firms aren't, but we are, and so I think we're in a good place. So rest assured, we'll get your deals done as long as the money flows in from the banks. I do want to reach out and quickly discuss Tim's point about the clauses. There are a high number of clauses that are floating around, especially some that were sent out, and Tim and I have discussed this. There are clauses, for example, that contemplate, should there be a closure of the land registry office or the banks, then both sides agree that the deal shall be extended 2 or 3 days or a week, depends on the particular clause. Now, some of them contain an exit clause, okay, and that was a point of concern, and that depends on which side of the fence that you actually sit on. So the ones that contain an exit clause that, for example, say should the land registry office or the banks not be available or operating within 1 month after the extended date of closing, et cetera, then this deal shall, be null and void. And that's a concern, if, and or one side or the buyer or seller shall have the option to terminate. So, it depends on which side of the fence you sit on. I mean, if you're the seller, theoretically, you probably don't want to add that clause in because you want the power to make that decision on your own and not provide an exit for the buyers, okay? And then if it does come down to that date where it can't close, then maybe the lawyers, I would say, let the lawyers deal with any extensions or agreements, okay? Whereas if you're sitting on the buyer's side of the fence, perhaps you want that clause inserted because you want some certainty in terms of future planning. If I'm renting a property now and but what happens if we can't close or I can't get the funds, or what if my job status changes during that period? I will still have an out. So it really depends on which side of the fence. So our perspective from discussing with Tim, and to add that exit clause would be, it's at your, it would be your specific choice, and you tailor that or delete that from, your actual transaction. So again, okay. I think that was sort of the main issue there. So Tim, did you want to add anything or questions on that?
No, just want to clarify with the group that if you are a seller, if you're representing a seller client, this is our discussion, just to break it down a little bit better or more detail. If you're representing a seller client, they need assurances that their deal is going to close and not terminate before they go out and buy something. This is why Gary and I discussed it, and I put a full stop on the offer, on the schedule clause, before that termination part starts. If you're representing the buyer, though, you may want that option to terminate because things may change in the financing or what is approved. I'll give you an example. I was offered a completely interest-only mortgage for one of our properties, and the underwriter called me apologizing, saying that this is obscene that I'm telling you this, but we have to treat your mortgage as a straight renewal and not as a change in your mortgage because of COVID-19. So accept a 1-year renewal and come back to me later so you can get what you wanted the first time. And all I wanted to do was change it from a mortgage on my renewal, it's renewing right now, from a mortgage perspective to an interest-only loan. Now, to me, remaining as is insignificant. It makes no difference to my payments or it just provided me more freedom back and forth. But it's an example of what is happening right now in the marketplace with financing. They actually wanted, on one of our properties, we owe about 30% of the value is debt. And they wanted a new appraisal for me to get the change in my financing. And the guy said, it's insulting. I'm telling you what they asked me to tell you, but it's insulting. And I'm telling you, just renew for a year and we'll get it done next year. So we have to be prepared for our buyers if things do change or there's slight variations in what they're offering. If something does change, that they have a way out.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tim. The other thing I've come across recently, and this is from one of your agents and one of their clients, is a lot of brokerages are now having visitors. If you're a listing agent or if you're representing a buyer, the listing agent will have what is called an indemnity or a release for any visitors to sign. And essentially you may want to exercise some caution here if you sign, or when you're signing those documents, because it wasn't RE/MAX Ultimates. I took a look at one, I believe that was from a competing brokerage. I believe it was actually Chestnut Park. And when I looked at that and I had the discussions and the client discussed it in depth with the client, Some of the concerns were this: the language in there was very, very broadly written, so that, you know, it captured the visitor, the potential buyer. If you visit this property, you sign this release and indemnity, you are basically accepting any responsibility. If you catch COVID, if any of your family members catch COVID, if any third party members like a home inspector catches COVID. But it was so broad that it also captured if any other persons caught COVID potentially, and if it was potentially from this visiting person or this client. So that was way too broad. And the concern was, you know, if anyone in that house owner caught COVID, they could potentially try to figure out that it was this visitor. So you have to be very careful about the wording in some of these releases. Feel free to, you know, if you want me to take a quick look at it, I will forward it over to me. But, you know, just please exercise some caution, because, like I said, some of it is very broadly written. Tim, did you see, I think you were nodding your head because I think you probably saw that same indemnity.
Yeah, so this is my concern. Anytime you see a indemnity clause or form in any other brokerage, does not mean that it's correct. Unfortunately, it's the herd mentality right now, and a lot of brokers are taking the approach of covering their own asses at any and every expense, and that just does not, no disrespect to Chestnut Park in this case. I just believe that it does not put good light on our industry, and it lacks leadership, right? I think it's quite the opposite message that is provided out there. And yeah, before you have your client sign anything, by all means, please send it to me and or Larry or Jen. Like let's review it and make sure that we massage the language of it if we can. Very unfair what's going on out there. We should not be taking advantage of clients to sign documents that they should not be signing.
Absolutely, and that's a great point, Tim. The other thing, in discussing with Larry, we had a quick discussion, you know, given, you know, what if parties are trying to take advantage of this COVID situation and not close transactions? From our position, you know, both parties have a duty to act in good faith, you know, and close the transactions as specified within the terms of the agreement of purchase and sale. So, you know, if it does happen, you know, I wouldn't certainly advise it, and you shouldn't as realtors to try to take advantage of. If your client asks you, again, you know, it's probably a matter for lawyers to deal with if one party cannot close, but absolutely you've got a 100%, you know, duty to act in good faith to try to ensure that, you know, these deals close, you know, as specified on the terms of the agreement of purchase and sale. Larry, I think you wanted to touch upon that also.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Actually, Tim and I talked about this a few days back. What I was trying to get at was somebody was saying that, okay, we've got an accepted deal, it's a firm deal. Now it's about 2 weeks before closing, the COVID-19 kicked in, and all of a sudden they go, you know what? Buyers now push and go, what if we just tell them we're not going to close, or they should do something for us and we'll make sure we close. So using it almost like saying, well, you know what, we're going to try to use every excuse we can over the next 2 weeks prior to closing. It's almost similar to the home inspection clause. All of a sudden you're going, well, everything's falling apart and we want a deal. What we're saying is be careful, because it may not be you. Maybe you sold this property to one of these clients, a co-broker, and they're calling you back going, oh, we're having some problems and we can't reach a lawyer, but we may not be closing, and so on and so forth. I just caution you, and Gary knew exactly what I was saying. He jumped on it. And Tim, I just wanted to see if you weighed in. You know, we were talking about pre-negotiating after the deal.
Unfortunately, it's happening. The little birds are circling everywhere. There's a lot of troll buyers out there, and karma's a bitch, right? Like that's not, you know, that's not nice. Now more than ever, there should be more authenticity, you know, and you know, transparency, and nobody's gonna forget these times. Like people, the way they're going to be treated by law firms or real estate companies or agents, they're not going to be forgotten. So I believe that you should hold your ground. And again, this is why we're here. You know, we want to be the unattached, unemotional sounding board for you. So if you do experience that, you know, please just let us know and let us, you know, walk through it.
Yeah, and I'd also advise maybe speak to your client's lawyer about this potential situation. If you suspect, if you're the listing agent, you suspect the buyer's not going to close, or they're intimating that they may or may not close, then definitely, you know, have your client speak to the lawyer, or you can maybe reach out to the lawyer and the lawyer can contact the buyer's lawyers. Do not renegotiate any terms, okay? You know, you know, because you want to obviously protect your client's best interest. If I'm acting for the seller, essentially, you know, my position would be we have a legal and binding agreement of purchase and sale. If you're not, my initial position, you know, would be essentially we'll be ready, willing, and able to close. And if you do not close, then we will hold your client in breach. If we have to relist the property for sale, we will. And we will hold your client, the buyer client, liable for any damages, being any suffering any shortfall in the sale price or whatnot, any additional commissions or legal fees. So that's the legal position there. So I would, you know, this COVID situation, people trying to take unfair advantage of this situation should not be, you know, exercised or whatnot. So we have to, you know, be diligent about that.
And one more comment I need to make is, as agents, the first person they throw a dart at is the agent on representation and how they've been represented, or what has not been disclosed, or, you know, or they're just trying to find something, and they may even come after us as a brokerage as well. And never ever negotiate anything. Say thank you for your concerns. I've heard them. I've listened to them. If you don't mind, let me speak to our leadership team, our broker owners, what have you, and get back to you. Because the moment that you negotiate anything or seem that you are negotiating, in the eyes of RICO and the insurer, you could be deemed to have some guilt or some fault, and
Absolutely.
that also waive your insurance.
And that's the key point.
And you don't want to waive your insurance. You do not want to be out there on your own. I know that we are problem solvers as realtors. We are facilitators. We are the buffers between buyers and sellers. And that innate instinct makes us blurt out, well, let me help you. What if I do this? What if I do that? Last thing you do is that, because that just demonstrates that there might be something wrong in your involvement in this transaction. So the moment you hear it, say, whoa, I didn't expect that. Thank you very much for sharing it with me. If you don't mind, let me give you a call back. I want to speak to our office. I'll get right back to you. And then we will guide you at that point on what to say or not to say, and go from there.
And Tim, if I may add with that, excellent points, excellent. And Gary, what I'm afraid of, and not that our reps are going to do this, but if one does do that, you're actually now starting to give advice to not your client, might be somebody else's client, and you just stepped over the threshold going, now we're in trouble already with our fiduciary duties, and what did you just do? And you may be innocently thinking you're trying to help them. You're going, that wasn't help. Stop talking. Call.
Absolutely.
We had these calls before. Just stop talking.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Tim and Larry hit the nail right on the head. Stop talking and just say, I hear you. I will forward your comments, or we'll obtain a response from our client, and that's all you should do. Again, the key issue with insurance is you might negate your insurance coverage, as Tim mentioned, with any admissions or any additional information. Okay, so please be diligent about that. Okay. Those were sort of the main points that I really wanted to cover in our discussion. Maybe we can open it up for some Q&A, or if there are any questions from the agents.
Hey, Gary, I got a question for you. I know you don't do a lot with regards to lease. It's Jimmy here, but maybe Tim or Larry can help out. I've had some tenants reach out to me saying that the landlord is looking for them to end their lease, you know, or have them leave at the conclusion of their lease. You know, and they're asking me, hey, is that something they can do? You know, I don't know, like it's a non-eviction thing in place right now, but you know, what would be the best place, or how would, you know, what advice should I give them in terms of seeking out the right counsel in regards to that situation?
I think that's a great question. I'll take a stab at it, and then maybe Larry and Tim can assist. But essentially, you know, as you've mentioned, we're not landlord and tenant lawyers, but my understanding is they have the ability to, the tenants, to reach out to the landlord and tenant tribunal, because they are the governing authority in terms of adjudicating these landlord and tenant issues. The underlying theme with, you know, the Residential Tenancies Act, the legislation in the Landlord and Tenant Board, is essentially human rights law, right? Or protection. It's actually structured to protect the tenants. So I find it, the landlord may find some issues in trying to evict tenants at this point in time. But again, I would really advise your clients to contact the Landlord and Tenant Tribunal.
Okay, what if the lease is expired prior to, you have any, like, so the lease is up and the landlord doesn't want to renew the lease, to fall under the same jurisdiction?
Absolutely. Still, if they want to contest, again, they'd still seek, you know, some relief or adjudication from the Landlord and Tenant Board. But you know, you have to, under the typical law, essentially to end a lease, they require 60 days clear notice, obviously, from the date of the prior to the end of the term. So they have to ensure that the notice is given in proper fashion.
Right.
And whether or not that was completed or not, again, that's a question for your tenants. You know, if it's not served properly, then essentially they'll still have, you know, an option to contact the Landlord and Tenant Tribunal. I really would suggest they do that. The other thing they may want to do is contact you know, a landlord and tenant lawyer, which tends to be, there aren't that many out there, to be honest, but there are some paralegals that may be able to assist.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jimmy. Stay safe.
Yeah, you too, buddy. Nice to see you.
Are there any other questions? Anybody else on the line?
I have a question. It's Andre here. I just wanted some clarification on if we had a buyer who wanted to go see a place. I wasn't quite clear on, are some brokerages asking us to sign an indemnity form before we go see this place? Or what's this? How does that compare to working with COVID?
I'll answer that.
Yes, please.
I'll answer that. So this is extremely important that we understand why I'm disappointed with some brokerages around us. When you book an appointment with RE/MAX Ultimate, for you to go to the appointment, there's actually a COVID-19 precaution that you have to agree to before going. And in that precaution, it's like, I accept or I decline. And it has all the rules. You're not sick, you're not touching anything, you haven't traveled, you're not bringing kids, you're not using the washroom. All these things are there and you accept it. And then by you going there, that demonstrates that, you know, you've been informed and you've checkboxed it and we have it all timestamped. What some brokerages are doing is they're saying, thanks for booking the appointment, sign this form before coming in. And that form is what we referred to earlier, with no disrespect to Chestnut Park. That is a very broad statement, and you can actually read it as no matter what happens in the property.
Yes.
Like they could light a fire in the property and they're not responsible, right? Like they can literally drop a bottle of wine on somebody's carpet and they're not responsible. Like it's such a blanket open clause that it's actually, I can't believe they actually have it, right? So And there are brokerages that don't have the same front end service we have in Broker Bay that allows for that to work that way. So they're sending you a different form to sign, Andre.
But Tim,
The working with COVID-19 form is something that we've created for our buyers and our sellers and not for agents. We've created that form so when you go to a client and you're working with them, like working with a realtor, now it's called working with COVID-19, right? So we have both of them. One's for agency and fiduciary duty. One is outlining how the showing process, the selling processes, buying processes, and the pandemic and what it means works. And yes, there is a indemnity built into it to the extent of COVID-19. Like we actually say the extent of COVID-19 on it. Way better and much more. We've had lawyers actually comment, our agents said that the lawyers have liked the way we've done it. They've actually said, oh, good on you guys. It's softer, it makes sense, right? It's not a blanket.
It's fair and transparent.
Yeah, both ways.
and sorry, just to clarify, you mentioned that when someone books a showing at our office, they are given checklist to say accept or decline.
Yes.
But that's only if you book online. What if you call up the office and say,
Same thing.
Where do you accept and decline when you call over the phone?
They send you the confirmation and then you click on it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Gary, can I ask a question? It's Bob. There's been a lot of misinformation regarding the force majeure. Can you confirm that, in fact, a force majeure exists in a real estate contract in Ontario?
You caught, in terms of that, you caught me off guard with that one. Do you want to elaborate a little more? Sorry.
Well, I mean, there's been some lawyers that have been telling me that, for example, there is something embedded inside the agreement that sort of an act of God, a force majeure, that if something does happen, such as a pandemic, war, tornadoes, earthquakes, that in fact the contract can't be canceled. And there's a lot of misinformation going on about that. Maybe you can clear that up.
Okay. I can confirm at this point in time, we have not come across any law firms or clients trying to use that measure to exit a transaction. I would still, if I'm representing the sellers, I would still try to enforce the agreement of purchase and sale. At some point in time, this COVID issue will be dealt with. We are still closing transactions. The banks are still open. Okay, law firms are still open. So I'm not sure how they could, use this situation, an act of God or whatnot, COVID, to deal with, to try to exit out and say, it's an unexpected event.
I'll give you a practical example. I mean, we've since mutually released the parties because it actually worked for my client. But we actually had a Toronto Blue Jay that was leasing out a high-end penthouse from my client, and he cannot legally cross borders. The major leagues are not allowing him to actually fly. So their sort of statement was, well, we'd love to fulfill our obligations, but we literally cannot physically come and occupy the unit. It worked out well, but would they have a stance on that? I physically can't be in Canada.
I'd say, unfortunately, you signed an agreement of purchase and sale or a lease agreement. As the seller or the landlord, it's not my responsibility to confirm whether or not, or you can actually live in that unit. I've got, ironically so, when you mentioned we have I know a professional sports player is in the same situation. There's my understanding is they're still paying the rent. And they've flown back to their country.
So, Gary, there was a question that was sent to me, if you don't mind.
Okay.
One of our agents sent it in. They're in a position where they may do an amendment to close, and the question was something to the effect of, should they try to amend their closing sooner? I guess in essence, they're fearful that maybe the registry offices may be closed or not. Do you have any kind of insight on that? I mean, I know it's down the road, who knows, but what would maybe be a recommendation to them?
That's a tough decision to make. I can give you a clear-cut example. We had someone from a different brokerage, not Remax Ultimate. The deal was scheduled to close in June. They advanced the closing up to 2 weeks, and that deal will probably not close now because there are open permits over that property or there are issues to be dealt with. So, you know, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, yes, we all have this concern of whether or not we can actually close the transaction, but if you do move it up, is there enough time for the mortgage to be set? Are there any open permits on the actual property? So, you know, for the lawyers, they'll need time to deal with that, or the sellers may have to need time to close out those permits. There are issues that you have to be, you know, aware of. But, you know, if everything's a green light and you can bump it up, but not too quickly, obviously, then that's potentially an option. You know, again.
I agree with you, Gary, and that's kind of where I was going with this before with this person. But the reality is, you're right, because if it's a building permit, you're going, well, wait, they may not be giving that, but they are closing deals. The registry office is available for that. Again, it's a moving target. We all know that. Every day is going to be different. Even while we speak today, some of the questions that were asked were amazing. They were great questions today. Fantastic questions. And Tim, for him not to be talking is amazing. There's Tim now.
I have to say something. I'm going to say this to you. I feel it in my heart. There are more and more listings hitting the marketplace. I'm not telling you to go out and sell real estate. Don't get me wrong here. I'm telling you that there are more listings hitting the marketplace. The odds of the registry system closing is becoming less and less of a concern. The shock that we went through of what's going to happen, the fear we went through with what's going to happen is now subsiding. Okay, so now people are starting to realize that, okay, how is my personal financial position? What is my personal security in my job, right? How are we going to start managing through this? How am I affected that way? And am I moving forward with a search for a new home or selling a new home or renting a property or not renting a property? That's where we're at right now. Okay, so the idea of a force majeure and the idea of, in baseball terms, Bobby, the baseball season has not been canceled yet. The baseball season is just being delayed at this point. If you were telling me it was a hockey player, if you were telling me it was a basketball player, I can see a different conversation. The idea that the baseball player is saying force majeure, you know, you do what you got to do for your client because that's who you're representing. But if I was on the other side, I'd be like, what are you talking about? Right? Like, come on, right? Like, talk to me in a month from now. If you want to start to lease a month later, I get it. But not to, release it at this time. So again, I'm going to share with you that I am getting the sense and the feeling from more and more of you. And this is from you to me. This is not me drinking too much wine, making it up, is that your clients are now asking for leadership of us. They're asking for guidance from us. I have put Daniel forward to have that COVID-19 presentation created because of your comments to me. Because I'm listening to you saying, they're asking me these questions. So I wanted to come up with a solution for you. This is where we're going. This is going to be lifted, whether it's in 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now, it's going to be lifted. Look around the world. We're going to be living with it around us. Even as the curve goes the other way, we got to find a way to live today with it around us and move and guide our clients. So I hope that kind of, I'm not trying to inspire you. I'm just trying to provide you with factual information to help you.
If I may just jump in here, people, first off and foremost, I want to say, Gary, thank you so much, because I know we had a targeted time, and I don't want to, take advantage of the situation. We've had some great people that have been on the line. Everybody that contributed today, I think, in my humble opinion, has been excellent. And from a leadership perspective, I think Jen was offering free wine or something. She said something about Thursdays. Jen, if you want to weigh in and maybe tell them where they can pick up their wine baskets. Come on.
How about delivery? How about delivery? Delivery's good.
Delivery's excellent. But you know what? I'm not sure, Gary, if this is it for you, if you'd like to move on. Tim, is there anything else you want to add? I just want to say thank you before I move on, to say thank you to all of you that have contributed today. A special shout out, Daniel, for helping me out here with this side, because it was giving me a bit of a glitch here. But to everybody, hope you're safe. And honestly, if anything we can do from the leadership perspective, marketing perspective, my God, please reach out. Please reach out. Having said that, I think I'll sign off now. And thanks a lot. And again, if Jason and Costa, I'll get back to them and thank them on our behalf, because I think that was awesome. I hope you enjoyed that. I really do hope that, you know, as a team, leadership team, that you guys enjoyed today's presentation, guys. We'll have more, as many as we can get. Have a good day, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Daniel, take care, guys.
You too.